Welcome to Midnight Delight, where nightmares come to play. Tonight we venture into the unknown, where towering turbines whisper to the storm and cracks in the asphalt hide unspeakable horrors. As the wind howls and the ground trembles, you'll witness what lies beneath the surface of our world. Join us as we follow the fates of those who dared to climb too high or dig too deep, only to discover that some creatures are drawn to our presence, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. So turn down the lights, settle in, and prepare to face the unimaginable. Listen, if you dare.
It was supposed to be an easy job. I've been an elevator technician for over a decade now, and fixing malfunctioning elevators is about as routine as it gets. You go in, you check the control panel, you replace a part or two, and you're done. But that day was different. I got the call early in the morning. The dispatcher said there had been multiple reports of an elevator in an old high-rise building acting strange, stopping at floors that didn't exist. At first, I didn't think much of it. Old buildings have their quirks, and I figured it was just a faulty panel or bad wiring. I'd fix it, and that'd be the end of it. The building itself was in the middle of downtown, one of those towering ancient structures that no one really notices anymore. It must have been something back in its prime time, but right now, it's just another forgotten part of the skyline. People lived and worked there, but barely. Most of the offices were abandoned, and only a few floors were still occupied. I met up with my partner Charlie at the lobby. Charlie's been in the business longer than me, and he's seen it all. He's the kind of guy who never gets rattled. We worked on some pretty messed up jobs together, places where the elevators reeked of sewage and were infested with rats, but I'd never seen him spooked. When we walked into that building, though, I could tell something was off. The air didn't seem right, almost heavy, like it didn't want us there. The lobby was dimly lit, and the security guard at the front desk barely looked up as we signed in. No one else was around. "You ever worked here before?" Charlie asked as we waited for the elevator. "Nope," I said, watching the numbers on the old brass dial above the elevator doors slowly tick down. "But it's just an elevator. How bad could it be?" Charlie didn't say anything, but I could tell he felt it too. That creeping sense of unease. We both shrugged it off. We'd been through worse. The elevator arrived with a ding, and the door slid open with a groan. It was an old, rickety thing, the kind of elevator that creaks and shudders every time it moves. We stepped inside, and Charlie hit the button for the top floor. We figured we'd check the machine room first to see if there was anything wrong with the motor. As soon as the doors closed, the lights flickered. "Old wiring," Charlie muttered, not looking up. But it wasn't just the lights. The elevator lurched, and for a split second it felt like something was pressing down on us, like the air had gotten thicker. My ears popped, and the hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. The elevator started moving, groaning its way up the shaft, and for a few floors everything seemed fine. But then, without warning, it stopped. "Did you hit a button?" I asked, looking at Charlie. "No," he said, frowning as he glanced at the panel. "We're not even close to the top." The doors slid open and we found ourselves staring at nothing. It was just a dark, empty corridor. No lights, no markings, no sign of life. The floor number above the door said 7, but I knew something was wrong. We weren't supposed to be on the 7th floor. According to the building schematics, that floor had been sealed off years ago. It didn't exist anymore. "Let's just get back to work," I said, reaching for the control panel to close the doors. Before I could press the button, the lights flickered again. This time, it wasn't just a flicker. It was like someone had flipped the switch off for a full second, plunging us into darkness. When the lights came back on, the corridor outside looked different. There was something in the shadows. I couldn't make it out, but it was there, lurking just beyond the reach of the flickering lights. A shape, almost like a figure, watching us. "Charlie," I whispered, not taking my eyes off the dark shape. "Do you see that?" Charlie didn't answer. I turned to look at him and my heart nearly stopped. He was standing there, frozen, his eyes wide, staring at the open door. His flashlight was in his hand, but he wasn't moving. He wasn't even blinking. "Charlie!" I shouted, grabbing his arm and shaking him. He blinked, snapping out of whatever trance he'd been in. Yeah, I'm here," he muttered, shaking his head. "Let's get out of here." He hit the button for the top floor again and the door slid shut with a groan. But before the elevator could move, the lights flickered again, and I felt it. Something was in there with us. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. The air got cold, and there was this faint static in the air, like the hum of electricity before a storm. And then we heard it. A faint scraping sound, like nails dragging along the metal. It started above us, moving slowly, steadily down the walls of the elevator shaft. Charlie looked at me, his face pale. "You hear that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound got louder, closer, until it was right above us. The elevator shuddered again, and for a second I thought the whole thing was going to drop. And then the doors opened. We weren't at the top floor. Hell, we weren't even on a floor I recognized. The number above the door was blank, and the corridor outside was pitch black. It felt wrong, like the space outside the elevator wasn't part of the building anymore. Like we stepped into some other place. "We need to get out of here," I whispered, my voice starting to tremble. But Charlie didn't move. He was staring at the darkness, his face blank, his eyes glazed over. "Charlie!" I shouted, shaking him again. He blinked, snapping out of it before he could react. The scraping sound came back again, this time from the inside of the elevator. It was right behind us. I spun around, shining my flashlight into the corner, but there was nothing there, just empty space. But I could feel it. Something watching us, something close enough to touch. My skin crawled and the air felt thick, almost suffocating. "Let's go," I said, my voice shaking now. We stepped out of the elevator, and as soon as we did, the door slammed shut behind us with a deafening clang. I turned to hit the button to call it back, but the panel was dead. No lights, no response. "Damn it," I muttered, turning my flashlight toward the dark corridor. "We'll have to find another way out." We started walking, our flashlights barely cutting through the thick darkness. The air was heavy, like we were walking through molasses. Every step felt like it took us deeper into something we didn't understand. That's when I realized the air wasn't just thick, it was moving. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest. The air around us wasn't still. It was swirling like something was circling us. Invisible, but there. I could feel it brushing up against my skin, cold and sharp. "Charlie," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Something's here." He nodded, his face pale, his flashlight shaking in his hands. "I know." The scraping sound started again, this time from all around us. It was slow, deliberate, like whatever it was wanted us to know it was there. It wanted us to be afraid. And it was working. We kept moving, faster now, trying to find a staircase, an exit, anything. But the corridors were endless, twisting, like the building was changing around us. Every time we thought we were making progress, we turned a corner and ended up back where we started. And then we found it. A door, heavy and rusted with the word stairs barely visible through the grime. I grabbed the handle and yanked it open, and we stumbled into the stairwell, slamming the door shut behind us. For a moment, everything was still, and then the lights went out. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The scraping sound was back, louder now, echoing through the staircase. I fumbled for my flashlight, but the beam was weak, flickering, barely illuminating the steps in front of us. "Go," I whispered, pushing Charlie toward the stairs. "We need to go." We started running, our footsteps echoing in the dark, but the thing, whatever it was following us. I could hear it, feel it, moving just behind us, its invisible presence pressing in closer with every step. The air was thick, suffocating, and I could feel its cold breath on the back of my neck. Then, just as we reached the bottom of the stairs, the door ahead of us slammed shut. The lights flickered back on, and for a split second I saw it. A shadow, barely visible, standing at the end of the corridor, its form shifting and flickering like static. It had no face, no features, just a dark, twisted shape, but I could feel its eyes on me. It was watching us. The lights flickered again, and it was gone. We didn't stop running until we burst out of the building, gasping for breath, the cold night air hitting our faces like a slap. We didn't look back. We didn't need to. We never talked about what happened that night. We didn't have to. But I know one thing for sure. Something's still in that building. Something that shouldn't be there. And every time those elevator doors open, it's waiting. You ever hear about things you think ain't possible? Like the stuff you catch out of the corner of your eye late at night, or the sound you swear you heard when nobody's supposed to be there? Well, I've got a story for you, and believe me when I say, it ain't no ghost tale or campfire spook. This one's real, and if I hadn't lived through it, I'd call you a liar for even suggesting it. But I did live through it, and it's burned into my head, no matter how many times I try to push it away. It was a Tuesday night. I remember because it was my second graveyard shift in a row, and all I wanted to do was get through it, get home, and grab a cold beer. We were out on this stretch of highway, about 20 miles from the city, fixing potholes that had been wrecking people's suspensions. It was the usual crew, me, Jake, Hector, and Marty, and a couple of city sewer guys who were supposed to be checking the pipes below while we worked the surface. Midnight rolled around, and we had the floodlights set up, the rollers smoothing out fresh asphalt. It was quiet, like it usually is on those late-night gigs. No traffic, just the hum of the machines and the occasional sound of crickets from the fields beyond the road. Then the tremors started. At first it was small, just a little vibration underfoot, the kind you get when a big truck rolls by. But there weren't any trucks out there, just us. I figured it was one of the rollers, maybe the engine acting up, so I ignored it. We all did. But the thing about tremors, they get worse. And these did. By the time we hit the second hour, you could feel the ground shaking underneath your boots, like standing on a live wire. Hector was the first to say something. "Anyone else feeling that?" he asked, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Yeah, it's probably just the machines," I said, not wanting to think too much of it. "Nothing to worry about." Except it was. The tremors weren't normal. They felt different, and deep down, I think we all knew something was wrong. Jake, being the curious idiot he was, decided to wander over to the far side of the site where the sewer guys were working. He said he wanted to check in, but I think he was just looking for an excuse to get off the roller. That lazy bastard. I didn't see him come back. 10 minutes passed and the shaking got worse. Marty was cussing up a storm, checking the asphalt like something was about to crack open any second. We were about to call it in when Hector stopped cold, his eyes fixed on the ground. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, barely loud enough for me to catch. I strained to listen, but all I heard was the usual engines, the rumbling of machines. But then there it was, a low, distant growl, like something deep underground was waking up. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. Before I could say anything, there was a loud crack like thunder, and the ground buckled. The roller Marty was on tipped forward, nearly throwing him off. I saw a long, jagged crack split the asphalt, maybe 10 feet from where we stood. "What the hell was that?" Marty shouted, scrambling to get off the roller. Hector and I ran over to the crack, and I swear it wasn't just a split in the road. There was something moving down there, beneath the asphalt. It was subtle, but if you looked close enough, you could see it. A ripple, like something huge was shifting just below the surface. I yelled for Jake, but there was no answer, just the hum of the machines and that low, unsettling growl. "We need to get out of here," Hector muttered, his face pale as a sheet. "Not without Jake," I snapped, though my legs were itching to run. Something was wrong, real wrong. Then the ground gave way. It happened so fast the asphalt collapsed like a sinkhole opening up right beneath us. Hector went down first, disappearing into the darkness with a scream. I barely had time to react before something massive burst out of the hole. A beast covered in thick gray hide like the earth itself had come alive. No eyes, just this huge, gaping mouth full of jagged teeth and claws that could tear through concrete like paper. Marty screamed, backing up, but the thing, whatever it was, lashed out. One of those claws caught him in the chest, and he went down hard. There was blood. So much blood. I ran. I didn't try to be a hero. I just ran. I could hear the thing behind me, ripping through the asphalt like it was nothing. The ground shook with every move it made, and the sound of metal crunching filled the air as it tore through our equipment. I didn't dare look back. I didn't need to. I could hear it. I could feel it closing in. By the time I reached the truck, I was gasping for breath. My hands shook so bad I could barely get the door open. I fumbled with the keys, slamming them into the ignition, and when the engine roared to life, I floored it. The tires screeched as I peeled out of there, gravel and dust flying. In the rearview mirror, I saw the thing, the beast, slither back into the ground, disappearing beneath the highway like it had never been there. But the destruction, that was real. The cracked asphalt, the blood, Marty's body, torn open like a rag doll. I drove for miles, not stopping until I hit the city limits. When I finally pulled over, my heart was still pounding, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried calling the others. I tried getting a hold of Jake, Hector, anyone. But there was nothing. No response. Just dead air. The next morning, when the city workers showed up to check the site, everything was cleaned up. No sign of the destruction, no bodies, no cracks in the road, like it never happened. But I know what I saw. I saw something that night. Something that shouldn't exist. And I'll tell you this. If you're ever working out there on that highway late at night, and you feel the ground tremble beneath your feet, you run. Because whatever's down there, it's just waiting for you. You ever been up close to a wind turbine? Let me tell you, they're massive. Way bigger than they look when you're just driving past them. I've been a wind turbine technician for probably about 8 years now, so I've seen my fair share. Some jobs are a breeze. Just climb up, check the nacelle, maybe replace a part, and head back down. But this one still keeps me up at night. I don't care if you think I'm crazy, but what I saw that day, it wasn't something that belongs in our world. It started like any other call. My buddy Tom and I got word that one of the turbines on a remote hilltop was acting up, spinning out of sync with the others. No big deal, just some electrical issue, we thought. Except there was a storm coming in, one of those big ones where the sky goes dark way too early, and the wind starts howling like it's alive. "Looks like it's going to be a rough one," Tom said, glancing up at the sky as we pulled up to the base of the turbine. "Yeah, but we should be in and out before it gets bad," I replied, trying to sound confident. Something about the way the wind was whipping through the valley already had my nerves rattled. But I didn't want to let Tom know that. He's been doing this longer than me and never seemed to flinch at anything. We parked the truck and suited up. The turbine stood there like a giant, its blades slowly turning in the growing wind. The thing must have been over 300 feet tall. Climbing these monsters isn't exactly fun on a good day, let alone with a storm brewing. But hey, it's the job. As we started our ascent, the wind picked up, making the climb harder. The higher we went, the more the turbine swayed. Nothing unusual. These things are designed to flex. But it felt different that day, like it was moving with purpose, like it was alive. I shook off the feeling and focused on the climb. About halfway up, I glanced out across the horizon. The storm clouds were rolling in fast, dark and heavy, and for a second, I thought I saw something strange. There, weaving in and out of the clouds, were these long, dark shapes. At first, I thought it was just some birds or maybe debris caught in the wind, but they moved too smoothly, too purposefully. "You see that?" I called down to Tom. He stopped climbing for a second and looked out. "Nah, what?" "I don't know, something weird in the clouds." Tom chuckled, shaking his head. "You're probably just seeing shadows. Let's keep moving before this storm catches us." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something about those shapes bothered me. They weren't just shadows, they moved like they were alive. But we pushed on, and as we got closer to the top, the air changed. It wasn't just windy, it was electric. You know that feeling right before a lightning strike? That charged, buzzing sensation that makes your hair stand on end? Yeah, it felt like that, but constant. The whole air around the turbine seemed charged, and it wasn't just because of the storm. Then I saw it again, clearer this time. A long, snake-like shape darted between the clouds, moving in and out of sight, like it was swimming through the storm. It wasn't just one either. There were several of them, circling the turbine, getting closer. They were huge, their bodies shimmering like they were made of storm clouds and lightning. "Tom!" I yelled, this time with real panic in my voice. "Look, in the clouds!" Tom turned and finally saw them. His face went pale. "What the hell?" His eyes widened. I didn't have time to respond before one of those things, those serpents, got close enough to the turbine blades. As it did, the air buzzed louder, and I swear the thing fed off the energy from the spinning blades. It coiled around the turbine for a moment, like it was testing it, then darted away, vanishing back into the storm clouds. "Get down, man. We need to get down," I shouted, my heart pounding. But it was too late. The wind picked up even more, and the turbine blades started spinning faster. The serpents were drawn to it now, more of them circling closer, their dark forms outlined by flashes of lightning. Every time one of them got close to the blades, the turbine shuddered, like it was being drained of power. Tom was frozen, staring at the creatures in disbelief. "What the hell are they?" he whispered. "I don't know, but we gotta get the hell out of here," I yelled back, trying to snap him out of it. We started climbing down as fast as we could, but the wind was relentless, making it nearly impossible to move. I glanced up just in time to see one of the serpents dive towards the turbine again, its massive body wrapping around one of the blades. The whole structure groaned under the strain, and I could see sparks flying from the nacelle as the creature fed off the energy. Then, without warning, the serpent turned its head towards us. Its eyes, if you could call them that, were like glowing embers, deep and terrifying, and they locked onto us. It let out this ear-splitting screech, like the sound of metal grinding against metal, and then it lunged. "Go, go, go!" I screamed, but the thing was fast. Too fast. It shot down toward us, its long, twisting body moving like a lightning bolt. I could feel the heat of its breath as it passed right by us, just missing by inches. The metal ladder shook violently, and I had to grip it with all my strength to keep from being thrown off. Tom wasn't so lucky. One of the serpent's coils clipped him, sending him flying off the ladder. He screamed as he fell, his body disappearing into the darkness below. My heart sank, but I didn't have time to react. The serpent turned its attention back to me. I was all alone now, halfway up a wind turbine with a storm raging around me, and these massive sky serpent creatures hunting me down. I thought about jumping, about just letting go and ending it right there. But something in me refused to quit. I wasn't going to let those things take me. I started climbing again faster than I'd ever moved in my life, not even thinking about the danger. All I knew was that I had to get to the nacelle at the top. If I could just get inside, maybe I'd be safe. Maybe. The serpents were relentless, though. They swarmed around the turbine, diving and weaving, their bodies crackling with electricity. I could feel their presence closing in, but I kept climbing, one hand after the other, praying I'd make it. Finally, I reached the top. I pulled myself into the nacelle and slammed the hatch shut behind me, locking it tight. For a moment, I thought I was safe. The wind was still howling outside, and I could hear the serpents screeching, but at least I had a barrier between them and me. Or so I thought. The whole nacelle shook as one of the serpents slammed into it, denting the metal. I could feel it outside, scraping its body against the walls, trying to find a way in. The lights flickered as the electrical system struggled to keep up with the drain the creatures were causing. I knew it was only a matter of time before the power went out completely. I backed up into the corner, clutching my flashlight like it was going to save me, and watched as the nacelle groaned under the strain. I could see the metal warping, bending inward as the serpents coiled tighter around the turbine. One of them let out another screech, and the whole structure swayed. And then the lights went out. I was plunged into total darkness, the only sound being the wind outside and the low hum of the creatures feeding off the turbine's energy. My heart was racing and I could barely breathe. I felt like a trapped animal just waiting for whatever was outside to break through and finish me off. And then I heard it, a soft hiss coming from right beside me. I turned slowly, shining my flashlight into the darkness, and there it was. One of the serpents, its massive head just inches from my face. Its eyes glowed with that same eerie light, and its mouth opened, revealing rows of jagged, lightning-infused teeth. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All I could do was stare as the creature lunged toward me, its body crackling with electricity. But just as it was about to strike, something happened. The turbine suddenly surged with power, the blades outside spinning faster than they ever had before. The serpent screeched, recoiling from the energy. I didn't know what was going on, but I wasn't about to stick around and find out. I threw open the hatch and climbed out onto the top of the turbine. The wind was insane, whipping around me, but I didn't care. I had to get down, had to get away from those things. I started climbing down as fast as I could, not even thinking about how dangerous it was. The serpents were still circling, but they seemed disoriented, like the sudden surge of power had messed with them. I didn't care why. I just knew I had a chance and I wasn't going to waste it. By the time I reached the ground, the storm was still raging, but the serpents were gone, disappeared back into the clouds like they were never there. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what had happened. Tom didn't make it, and I still don't know what those things were, whether they were some freak of nature or something else entirely. But I do know one thing. Whatever they were, they fed off the storm, off the energy of the turbines. And if you ever find yourself up there during a storm like that, don't look up, don't climb, because they're waiting.
You've survived another journey into the dark, but remember, what you've heard tonight is just the beginning. The sky still holds secrets, and the ground beneath your feet may not feel as solid as you think. These creatures, these mysteries, they're out there, waiting for the next storm, the next tremor, the next opportunity to remind us that we are not alone. If you're brave enough to return, Midnight Delight will be here, ready to take you deeper into the unknown. Until then, sleep well, if you can.